Hey everybody, this is Modern Refugee. I hope everybody is doing well this evening. Going to give everybody a few minutes to pop in here. Let's see what we got. Hey there, happy girl. How you doing? We are getting some rain right now. Library Lizard, good to see you, my friend. Mother Clucker, howdy from Wisconsin. I bet you the leaves are beautiful in Wisconsin right now. Northern Wisconsin. I love it. I wish I could move up there. Like I said, I know some great places up there. Beautiful, beautiful country and peaceful. Got heavy rain this morning. I was expecting rain this morning. The radar was lit up through pretty much most of the lower peninsula of Michigan. And other than that, the traffic was actually pretty quiet today. I think everybody's up north looking at the leaves. Hey there from Alabama, Simply Southern Roots. Good to see you. KD Racing. Glad to have you here. Northern Minnesota is definitely past the peak. I believe it. All it takes is, and then a one good rain pretty much takes care of everything. Hello there, Harry Morgan. The rain always kills the color here. You know, we'll have beautiful color and we'll have about a 2-day rain, which we're expecting. Then it's the end of the color for the season. Then everything is bare. Severe weather headed overnight. I believe it. Always those changes of seasons are always rough. Back in 2011, we had a real bad one that came through our town, and we had a pretty large power outage that really tested everybody's metal. There was a lot of power lines and stuff, and power poles that were destroyed right here in the village. So then it took quite a few days for that to all come back online. We were out of power for about 2.5 days, and that's when I decided, hey, we're going to get a generator and get that going. And that was some of the best money I ever spent was on that generator. Mother Refugees in here. JD Prepineri, how are you doing? Oh yes, trolls. To explain what a troll is, the people in the upper peninsula of Michigan, the people in the lower peninsula of Michigan are called trolls because we live under a bridge. So if you remember Billy Goat's Gruff, the troll lives under the bridge, and we are all trolls. In fact, when I went bear hunting, troll was actually my handle on the radio equipment that we had when we were bear hunting. Squirrel today with about half its coat turned white. Not sure if that's because of winter or not. Yeah, I'm not sure. When wild animals, if they have a genetic reason why they're partially white, like a deer or some other mammal, the actual term for that's called piebald. And I have seen actually quite a few piebald deer. Actually, up by Traverse City is where we've seen quite a few different piebalds, different times. Paprika Pauline, hello from Northern California. Always sun, wish it would rain. Hey, Patriot Preacher, how are you doing tonight? Dana Green. I give you guys a little bit of a preview of coming attractions here for some videos I'm doing. I had so many people ask me to do more videos on the pumpkin canning video I did, and then on the pumpkin seed video. So I am actually going to do a video showing you guys different ways to utilize pumpkin and a hard winter squash, so you can make that actual meals for with your preps. So if you put up hard winter squash, I am going to show you guys some stuff with that. And another thing that's been coming up recently here is seasonings for your preps, for your beans and your rice and your different things that you put up. Seasonings are always the key to make that stuff palatable. And I actually store seasonings here. I actually have a couple of buckets that I keep basic seasonings in, and I want to do a video on kind of the seasonings that I store, and then of course how to utilize those seasonings, because a lot of different seasonings, seasoning mixes that you get out there, if you have the raw ingredients, you can actually mix that stuff up yourself, plus cater it to everybody's tastes in your household. So, show you how to use some of all that stuff that's available out there. And then of course, if you get it in bulk and you get it in smaller quantities, it would be a lot cheaper. So especially if you have Amish or Mennonite stores in your area, you guys can grab that stuff. That was a big thing with my mother. At least once a year, she would go to the Amish or the Mennonite stores or the bulk food stores. We had one in Bay City and Saginaw back in the day. There's still one in Saginaw. It was called Grains and Greens, where you can get bulk spices, and they are a lot cheaper than the bottled up stuff that you get in the stores. In fact, actually, big grocery stores, your Kroger's, your Myers, your Walmarts and stuff, those are actually the most expensive place to buy those spices. And if you get them bulk in these different places, you can save quite a bit of money. Squirrels don't turn color with the seasons. Ermine do. I guess I didn't know that. I've only, we've got two kinds of squirrels in southern Michigan where we are here. When you get further north in the lower peninsula, there's grays and there's black squirrels and stuff. But here we have red squirrels, which are basically little angry rats with tails and bushy tails. And then the fox squirrels around here actually get quite large because of all the corn and stuff. And you got a couple of big fox squirrels, you got enough for a couple of people to make a meal out of them. But as they have a tendency to be tough, so you really got to simmer those down. Oh yeah, the all the rallies that were going on. It was pretty quiet around here, but I'm sure all the large cities around here had some versions of that, and there's been a lot of stuff going on around here. Let's see. Essential Tam, how are you doing? Prepped a lot of stuff. Now I got to prep different stuff because I found out I'm diabetic. Yeah, we've had that exact same thing here in our household. My wife has borderline celiac, which is a pretty bad gluten intolerance. And I had, wheat and I had flour and stuff here, and I still keep some flour and stuff here, but a lot of that stuff I actually gave away to different people. The whole wheat was easy to give away. Anybody with chickens was glad to get that. But I've kind of catered my preps now because I do a lot of the cooking. I've catered a lot of that for the gluten-free stuff, or stuff that has a less amount of gluten in it. And another thing with bread, my wife can eat a little bit of gluten. So like loaves of bread and stuff, if I bake the bread or the baked goods or whatever, if I make that myself where there's not a lot of junk in it, she actually can tolerate that a lot better than anything store bought. And if you look at like store bought bread and stuff, they put um, like high potency gluten and stuff in that, plus all the other preservatives and stuff. And I think the combination of those things really is what inflames her celiac. So that is one of the things. And then me, because I had 8 inches of intestine taken out and resectioned. One of the things that I'm not really shouldn't have anymore is corn. And since I had that surgery in 2023, I literally have only had a half of one cob of sweet corn. So we just don't do sweet corn anymore, because they said that's something, because I had that bowel surgery, just stay away from that. So I took, cases of sweet corn that we had here. I took that up and I donated that all to the church, so the church could get that out to families so that they could still use that. But now stuff like hominy and masa and corn flour, that stuff's all good to go. But that whole sweet corn, that's a complete and total no-no. Hey there, prepper for the ages. Been prepping almond and coconut flour. Another thing that I keep in my preps now, because I had that surgery and I lost so much weight, is protein powder, like the vanilla protein powder, in case there is some type of illness or something like that. That stuff keeps for a couple of years from the expiration date. So if there would be some type of illness after an SHTF here and I couldn't get all the stuff that I get now, and I would want to fortify stuff with extra protein, I started keeping a few of the large containers of that vanilla protein powder here to basically boost up the nutritions. The same with like multivitamins. I keep quite a large stock of things like multivitamins and like that emergency drink mix. So you have, the magnesium and you have the magnesium, the vitamin C, the zinc, those kind of things in those drink mixes, so you can boost your immune system if there is something going around and you don't have access to a ready med or something like that where you can get in there. I have some ways here I can mix up some concoctions to boost everybody's immune system. Subdog, how are you doing? Sometimes not the gluten, but the chemicals move, and that's true. And that's it. That's the glyphosate. Everything. I don't know if everybody knows this, but with agriculture, um, corn, wheat, sugar beets, all these monocrops that all the farmers grow nowadays, those are all what they're called Roundup ready. They're actually genetically modified to withstand the Roundup so they can spray Roundup on the fields after they plant the corn or whatever, and the corn will grow and it'll kill everything else because the corn has been genetically modified to basically withstand the Roundup. And then of course, that's your food, or it's the stuff that feeds your food, like with livestock and stuff. So persimmons here in Texas are nearly ready for jamming up. I have never had a persimmons. If I ever get down south, I'm going to definitely put that on the list. Like, what's the other thing? Burgoo. Burgoo is kind of a stew that they put wildlife and stuff in, and that's a southern thing, like Kentucky, Tennessee type thing. If I ever get down there, I got to try that too. I know Uncle Bumble likes that, so he's told me that I needed to try that sometime. Patriot Preacher was one old guy with an AR strapped to him at a rally. I think it was like a counter protester. Oh, I believe that. I've actually been rolling quite heavy here lately, and that's probably going to be my video that I'm going to put out tomorrow. I've sort of, with all the stuff that's been going around here, we had some local thieves and stuff that were basically causing a lot of problems. We've had threats at local businesses. I know I've said that in previous videos and previous live streams. And with all the unrest and everything that's been kind of going on, not that there's been any like major incidents around here, but I've really beefed up my sort of my Minuteman kit that I've been kind of taking with me. Not so much like if I'm going to a large city, but here in town, the local areas, I've been basically carrying heavy, more or less. Let's see here. Mosaic. I have wanted to store some chocolate protein. I'm going to do it. I'll tell you what, Mosaic. That protein, when I had my bowel surgery there and I had problems with my digestive tract, that protein is what's got me back on track. And I'll tell you what, I will never be without a couple of containers of that in my preps ever again. Oh, hey Scout, how you doing? Appreciate the advice there you're giving me on my wife's INR information. That was really nice. Yeah, I appreciate that. We are hoping that we can get something figured out so we can actually read her INR here at home, especially if there's some type of SHTF situation. What is, for people who didn't catch last night's live stream, my wife has blood clotting disorders and she has to have her Coumadin checked, which is the rat poison that they give people for people with blood clots. But there's always a problem with you can get the machine and you can read the results, but then the powers that be, the doctors, the insurance companies, say you're not competent enough to read the results on that machine and give the doctor that information. So we're trying to get that worked out with University of Michigan Hospital so we can actually have that here, and again add to our health preps and our medical preps that we have here. Moose hunting. Sub, you're going moose hunt. I am good started moose season here. I hope you get a moose. That is something I'll probably never get a chance to hunt, but it would be awesome to try it once. Sunset, hey, how you doing there for mid New York? Prepper for the ages. You're right about the SNAP and the food stamps. Yes, and that is something that again is in kind of in the back of my mind. There's so many people around here where we're at, especially, and that's something with rural areas too. There's so many people that are on SNAP benefits that get food stamps. And that stuff's all going to get cut off. Now, I heard here in Michigan that the state is going to pick that up, but the state doesn't have any money. The state's always got budget problems here in Michigan. So a lot of those things are paid for by the federal government. They give money back to the states, and that's how they provide all that stuff. And I'm wondering exactly when that is going to run out, because I don't see this government shutdown ending anytime soon. So I am really concerned as winter goes on how these things are going to transpire. Hey there, Christine from Connecticut. Hey there, Dangerous Freedom. I'm rebuilding my Get Home kit for more mobility. I have got mine streamlined right down. I got a chest rig. I got my my Get Home bag. They're both Hill People gear, so they integrate really, really well with one another. And of course, I got my really beefed up first aid kits in my vehicles, but then I also have first aid in my Get Home bag and my chest rig. And then of course, I'm carrying my heavy boom stick in there as well, along with my EDC. So I have a pretty robust kit right now, because you just never know what's going to happen. It could, I'd rather overreact and have a little too much than not enough, because things are definitely not going in the right direction from where I stand. Hey, Tammy. Getting rain down there. Yeah, we're expecting rain tonight, quite a bit of it. Falling Skies Homestead and Preparedness. Falling Skies is one of my oldest subscribers. He has got a great little channel in his own right. So if you get a chance, go out and check him out. He is there in Georgia, and he is big into his garden and his homestead. And I know everybody's talking about no King's Rally, but you should be looking at the long lines at the gold exchange here. I heard a lot of people have been selling gold. I actually work with somebody who has a relative that's a jeweler, and there's been a lot of talk about people selling metals and stuff right now. But the problem is, where we're at here, there's only like a couple of places where you can sell the metals to get your cash back out of it. So that's kind of always the bottleneck when it comes to the metals around here. I know everybody in the prepper sphere out on YouTube, they always like metals as a hedge or a backup to some type of financial collapse. But the one bad thing about metals is right now, you can't go into a grocery store and say, here's some silver coins. I want face value for this to go buy groceries. You have to exchange that back for cash. So then there's only certain places. Well, then those guys take their cut out of it. They don't always give you spot. They give you a little bit less than spot price, so they can make their money too, because that's the business aspect of it. So then that's always the bottleneck. It would be nice if some of these places would actually take the metal for the actual value when you go into these places with them, all the technology that we have now. You think that could be possible, but whether or not that's going to actually take place, I don't know. And that's always been a bottleneck with buying metals, is you have to have some place right now. As long as cash is still out there and around, you have to be able to exchange that to cash to actually use that in most situations. Hey there, Old Spice, how you doing? Yeah, it's definitely been dry here in the Lower Peninsula of Michigan, terribly dry the last couple months. Dangerous Freedom, I am dropping the carbine and extra mag for a 45 long slide and brace. Oh, that's a good idea. There's nothing wrong with a 1911. They're lacking a little bit in capacity, but the newer 1911s and stuff that I've shot are very, very accurate. And I actually had a couple old guys tell me when we were shooting once here, man, maybe about 2-3 years ago, it was probably 3 years ago now. They said, why don't you carry a 1911 with your EDC? And if they'd be a little bit smaller, I'd maybe say that, because they are a lot more accurate. We were actually shooting targets at 100 yards with those pistols that day, and I was making consistent hits with my 1911. I'd love to show it to you, but YouTube would knock this live stream down in a heartbeat if you show a firearm in a live stream. That's a big no-no. I have a gold wedding band laying around. Should I sell it? I'll tell you what, gold is ridiculously high right now. And the thing with wedding bands is those are alloys, so you're not going to get the full price they have. And I actually did a video on that, about how to test metals to see once how pure they are, whether it's silver or gold. Like my wedding ring right here, that's only like 10 karat gold. They put the alloy and stuff in the rings so they hold their shape and stuff. So that is something. They take a little bit of the ring and they rub that on like a little bit of a whetstone, and they put a drop of acid on that. And because gold is non-reactive, if that dissolves, then the gold isn't that pure. And that's how they tell the difference between real gold and fake gold at these pawn shops and stuff. And those gold testing kits are actually pretty inexpensive, and they usually go for silver too. I'll have to put a link in the description for that with my Amazon store. I'm sure there's some where you could get on Amazon. So if you think about using metals and bartering metals and stuff after an SHTF situation, you might want to get a little set of those and put them in with your preps and stuff. So if you do decide, hey, I might want to barter with the people in town here or whatever, and use my Silver Eagles or whatever it is that you have, or junk silver, you have a way to test that stuff to make sure that it actually is silver, and you're not getting swindled. Because I know a couple of the coin shops around here, like 10 years ago when I used to frequent them more often, they actually got swindled. People brought in little 1 ounce silver bars and they thought they were legit, and they didn't test them, and they turned out to be fake. They turned out to be phony because they didn't test them. And she said at that point, then from that point forward, any gold or silver or anything that came in there to be sold back to them, they tested all that stuff. So that's something to keep in mind. Again, talking about SHTF and barter and stuff, people will switch if times are that bad where there's bartering going on and markets and stuff going on because the system has collapsed. I will guarantee you there are going to be people swindling people. You're like, oh, I'm going to sell you this bucket of wheat, right? Let's say a bucket of wheat. Let's do that for simplicity's sake. And they take that in, you open up the 5-gallon pail of wheat. It looks like a 5-gallon pail of wheat. And you go about your business, and you get home and you open up your 5-gallon pail of wheat. It's got that much wheat on top, and the bottom is filled up with some rock or some gravel or something like that. And there's a piece of cardboard on that, and now you just got screwed. You bought a bucket of rocks that you thought were wheat berries. So that's just a quick example. I'm sure I could, if I thought about it longer, I could do more, but that's something that you guys think about a little bit when everybody talks about barter, because everybody talks about barter and in the prepping channels. I also need a recommendation for protein powder. I didn't go crazy, Paprika. I want to say I bought the protein powder at a Walmart, in the Walmart brand in the pharmacy. I want to say it's white and it's got a green container. And I bought the vanilla because I figured the vanilla would go with more things. If I wanted to make some, milk, take some dry milk and make some dry milk and put a couple of tablespoons of protein powder in that, then that wouldn't taste bad. That would still have a pretty decent taste. Let me see if I can catch up here in the chat. I'm too busy jacking my jaws instead of paying attention here. A suppressed Glock 41 extra mags is less than half the weight, allows more mobility. Yep. Yeah, that's the one thing about the new modern handguns like Glocks and stuff. The polymer cuts a lot of the weight out of it. If you're doing business with a small business owner, they may work out a deal for your gold, silver. And that's true. And that's why you should establish relationships now. Like if you already have a relationship with a local gold and silver dealer, which if anybody is buying gold and silver for their own use, I'm no financial guy or nothing like that. But if you have a local coin shop or you have a local dealer that sells that stuff, now is the time to, kind of have a relationship with them, or start creating a relationship with them. Go in there, see what they got, maybe make some small purchases and stuff. So if something kind of does go bad, the economy does go bad, they already recognize your face. They know that you're a customer, you're legit. So, you already have kind of a heads up on everybody else that might be rushing in there in some type of panic situation, if that makes sense. Happy girl engagement ring. Yep. Like I said, that's the only thing though. A lot of the engagement rings and wedding rings and stuff like that, gold chains and whatnot, a lot of that stuff, that's not pure. That's going to be, I'd say 10 to 14 karat gold. Mother Clucker, Glucerna has protein powder, but it's not cheap for diabetics. That would be actually really good, especially, none of us need more sugar. I've been trying to cut back on my sugar, but there's just so much sugar in everything. Everything that you buy has just got sugar in it. It's absolutely insane. Of course, they're probably trying to shorten all our lives, right? That whole those agenda 2030 and all that other stuff. Washborn, how you doing there, buddy? I seen your fishing video, loved it. It was awesome. Harry Morgan, in a hyperinflation event, 80% of the population will lose everything. Yeah, if there would be some type of collapse, you look at all the medical problems that people have nowadays, and you look at, everybody's money is basically electronic. Who actually has, anything? You when they say you don't own nothing and you'll be happy, hell, we don't already own nothing. If I don't pay the property taxes on my house in a couple of years, they'll take it away from me. So really, I don't really own anything except for the small contents of the house or whatever. But yeah, it's they don't want you to have nothing. The powers that be just don't want you to have anything. You just shut up, go to work, do your job until you die, and then die quickly, and then the government has a way to take all your stuff after you die if you end up in a nursing home or something through Medicaid estate recovery. And you don't have anything. It's a constant battle trying to keep what you got. The test kit sounds like a solid plan. Yeah, I tell you what, they're not that expensive. And I actually, like I said, that video, I'll put a link in the description for this video too, because I actually showed it. I actually took my wedding ring and rubbed it on there and put the drop of acid on it to prove what the carat was on it. I don't remember what my ring was anymore, but I'll put all that in the description of this video here, so you guys can check that out for yourself. The thing with silver is junk silver, what they call junk silver, everything before 1964, like your dimes and quarters and stuff, that's 90% silver. So again, you still don't get spot price when you turn that stuff in. You get a little bit less than that, but that stuff is more, I guess, in denominations where you would trade for it. At least that's because I've never been in a situation, and there hasn't never been a situation where people bartered for that stuff yet. So, there's going to be everybody says that they're going to do that, but then it isn't really being done yet. So people would have to work out how they're going to do that. I'm trying to explain this, I guess, as best I can, but, nobody's bartered with silver unless just in small transactions, at local coin shops and stuff for collectors and people who've been into that stuff. But if it becomes a major thing where everybody wants to start bartering with silver all of a sudden, there's going to have to be, kind of some parameters and rules set up for that, and not even so much rules as it is kind of ethical ways to go about and do that, so people don't get screwed. Because you know what, people will take it if they find a way where they can swindle you. They're going to swindle you. Singer Tread sewing machines. Oh yeah, I wish I still had one of Mom's treadle sewing machines, and I don't anymore. I do have one of Mom's electric sewing machines here, but I haven't used it in so many years. I'd really have to look at it to remember how to use it again, and I'll load the bobbins and all that stuff. I'm not too bad at I can hand stitch stuff, but if I gotta make clothes by hand stitching it, it's gonna take forever. Pre-64 dimes and quarters will be the best for barter. Yeah, that Harry Morgan, that's the way I understand it, that is the preferred size. Jody from Michigan, Bay City, Michigan had a large group in the downtown area between 4 and 6. Yeah, and I get to Bay City occasionally, so yeah, I believe that. There was some people kind of talking about it today, but nobody really knew where it was or going on. Of course, I was working, so I couldn't jump in the truck and drive around, see if I could say anything. Store, they said, no longer accept pennies. I think that's coming. I think the penny thing is coming right quick. And I know people that save pennies still. They find wheat pennies and stuff. And I got some wheat pennies here that were my dad's, but they're more sentimental than I'm going to actually use them for anything. Old Spice, I have a bunch of silver. If nothing happens, that goes to my grandchildren. That's a win-win. Yeah, the silver that I got here that belonged to my grandfather was the same thing. He kind of said that's part of my life insurance. But he just passed that on to my mom. Well, then my mom didn't do anything with it, and it just passed down to me now. So I got a little baggie, like a little pirate that I am, a little velvet bag filled with some silver coins here. So I got a little bit if it's necessary. I'm not going to barter anything I can't produce myself. And you know what? Talking about barter in here, because it's such a popular, topic in the prepping videos and stuff. Skills are a barter, are a very, very much so a barter. So, if you know anything about medicine, or you know anything about mechanics, or about fixing anything, or you know how to facilitate people, introducing people to other people, you have those type skills. That stuff, that's all worth something. So people that are like registered nurses and stuff now, that have a basis of some type of skill, HVAC people that know how to install chimneys. How many, if there was a long-term SHTF grid gown situation, how much is a guy who knows how to build chimneys so people can install a wood stove in your house? How much is he going to make? How much is he going to make even bartering? My guess is that guy ain't going to have no problems feeding his family, even if there is no cash or anything, because he knows how to install something that everybody is going to need. So, you start looking at it like that. Those skills, those hard skills, those are legitimate bartering items. Yeah, I'll help you out. I'll fix your car or whatever that is so you can get back and forth to do what you got to do, but I want something back in return. Well, then, well, what do you got? Well, then you start looking at what's going to be valuable, and the stuff that I kind of differ tremendously from what I think is going to be valuable after an SHTF situation for barter than kind of what a lot of preppers on YouTube talk about. The stuff that I talk about is kind of completely different, and I'll give you another good example, like lumber. If you got to repair something and you need lumber, that's something that people will barter for. So if you got a bunch of 2x4s and 2x6s and stuff up in the rafters of your garage, just out of the way, sitting there, that's something that you can use for yourself to repair stuff, but then that's also barterable. And that's how I kind of look at bartering stuff. I don't buy stuff specifically to barter, but I have stuff here that I would barter, that I know people are going to need. And then if it doesn't go for barter, I can use it myself. So I hope that makes sense here, how I'm explaining it to everybody. Local businesses know whether to keep them or turn them into the bank. Yeah, and the electronic machines that sort all the change now, they're terrible, because they're the ones that are really taking a lot of you don't I haven't seen a silver coin in a cash, and I run a cash register every day. I have for years, and I'll bet you it's been 5 years since I've seen any amount of any type of silver quarters or dimes in a cash register, because all the machines in the bank and everything, they kick all that stuff out, and the people that work there take it. And that's basically how it is. Chickens take care of themselves. Yeah, that's to a certain extent they do. As long as they got a place where they can kind of retreat to if they're being chased by some type of predator or something, where the predator can't get in there and get them. That's the stuff. Mosaic, I have barter skills, and I have a lot of those. My plan is to barter food and produce. That's a good, set up your own after the end of the world fruit stand. That's that, along with the skills, that's going to be the way that people are going to get by, I think, to a certain extent. Old Spice, I wish I had more antibiotics. The problem with antibiotics is not all of them, a lot of them will keep for quite a long time, but then stuff like doxycycline, anything that ends in cycline, tetracycline, doxycycline and stuff, those things, if they sit too long, start to become toxic after a certain period of time. I don't want to say too much, because medical stuff can get misconstrued on YouTube, and I don't want to get in trouble. I still want to have my channel so I can, share things with you guys. But any type of doxycycline or anything like that, that will go toxic after a while. So will aspirin. I've been told aspirin is something that, if it sits for a long period of time, will also go toxic. And while I'm on this kick here, I'm going to throw out this other little nugget of wisdom for you guys. There are two different types of infections that people get. There is gram negative and gram positive infections. And those infections are treated with different classes of antibiotics. That's your guys' homework experiment. experiment for this week here. Go look up what the difference is between gram negative and gram positive infections and how they go about and treat those. That is something that is very valuable prepping information. And I don't know if they cover it when like those Chase antibiotics that you can get for, them emergency antibiotic kits that Chase Medical sells, because I've never even looked at any of those and stuff, but I know a lot of people endorse them, and they got links and they sell them and they're affiliates and stuff. But I wonder if they actually have that in the little booklet on how to read that stuff. But that's stuff that you need to know for those different medications. But that's just something so to help you guys out. Garlic and oregano oil is actually really is a really good, has a lot of medicinal purposes. So does raw honey. Raw honey has a lot of different medicinal uses too. Probably the most medicinal plant where we are here in Michigan is called plantain or plantain, and there's a wide leaf variety, there's a narrow leaf variety, and they both work really, really well. And they will draw infection out of a wound, and they're very, very medicinal. And if you look up plantain, wherever you're living in the country or wherever you're living, like in Canada or United States, look up what your local plantain looks like, because it grows all over the place. Plantain is extremely medicinal, so definitely keep that in mind, and I'll look that up. Could Mrs. MR switch her RX to Eliquist? She tried Eliquist. Eliquist failed, and she ended up in the hospital. And that was the plan. She wanted to use Eliquist because it doesn't have all the side effects that Coumadin are on, but the Eliquist failed and that was kind of the start of this year's medical problems with her. Rip Curl, banks don't keep rolls of large dollars and half dollars anymore here. Yeah, the last time that anybody really, they tried to push the little dollar coins with the presidents on there for a while, but then that all fell through too. According to Chase Medical, doxycycline does not become toxic like tetracycline, and that could be true, but from what I heard it was the opposite of that. I've heard from different people that are kind of know that stuff. They said, so I just don't really want to take the chance of that. But that I could be wrong. Like I said, that's just something that I kind of picked up from talking to different medical professionals over the years. So thanks there, ENH811. Thanks for your take on that. I appreciate you, and like I said, I appreciate people throwing out the different things that they know here. That's the whole point of these live streams. I have thought about that MR. There's going to be a lot of people misusing antibiotics. Yeah. You better save that stuff. You might need it someday. You don't want to just use that for any little thing, because you know what? If you're fortunate enough to have one of those Chase cases, that's going to be, worth buku bucks. If something does happen, if somebody some member of the family gets injured or gets very ill, to have something like that, those are awesome things to have. Doxy is important for Lyme disease. Yep, that's it. That's usually for tick bites. I've even had doxycycline prescribed to me for tick bites. Military studied medications, most are still good for decades. Yeah, when I when back when fish antibiotics were a thing, I preferred the amoxicillin just because it lasts really long, and it was very inexpensive at the time. But now, you can't get that stuff anymore. They clamp down on all that. Bartering, reloading as well. Yeah. Powder and primers, especially. You can probably get by with, making your own. Wheel weights make pretty good bullets. I don't know if anybody knows that out there, but all the old guys here that would cast their own bullets for like their black powder guns and stuff, and they would use wheel weights, and they would melt wheel weights. And there was something with the wheel weights. There was something that was added into it, so they were a little bit harder. They didn't deform, which means they didn't leave as much fouling in the rifling of the guns when they fired them. So wheel weights were something that were used quite often for making your own muzzleloading ammunition. Coconut water can be used as an IV. That's something I didn't know. I know that coconut water has some different medicinal properties, but that I did not know. Mosaic. Mikhail Kalashnikov, how are you? Yes, barter works. Oh, let's see here. In my years as a contractor, I bartered for silver and AR, plumbing services, a new roof, vet bills, and quite a few other items. That's awesome. That's kind of the skills for. I know people around here that have done work for people, and they were given pew pews for their work because the other people didn't have cash or whatever at the time because just like Mikkel said there, firearms can be currency too in an SHTF situation. Oh, geez, I'm sure YouTube's going to get mad about that I said that. Anyone here been kicked off Facebook lately? I haven't never been kicked off Facebook, but I've had a few warnings, and I don't even know what I did because at the time they didn't even really tell me. Rare earth metals. I heard rare earth metals are going sky high right now, and I don't, follow the commodities market, so I'm not sure on all the different metals and why they're going sky high, but I know that they are. Patriot Preacher, get a good book on what to do on what ailments. Yeah, like this guy right here. This is my favorite prepper medical book right here. This guy has got a little bit of everything in it, and it covers the different sections of the body and the different ailments, and it covers a lot of different. And then, of course, here is the microbials, and that is your antibiotics. That's your antibiotics and your dosings and that kind of stuff. And that's why I like this book. This is a darn good book, but there's a lot of medical tech. There's a lot of medical terms in there, so you need one of these to go along with it, so you can decipher what the medical terms mean. Like NPO, NPO means nothing by mouth. So if somebody's NPO, they can't have anything to eat or drink. And I didn't know that. That was one of the first things that I learned when I had my bowel problems, that what NPO was. YouTube is calling mother right now. Yeah, I'm sure they are. They're like, oh, that modern refugee, he's on the shit list again. Uh, Unless you have a ton, I would not barter ammo or reloading components. You know, I don't think that, because ammunition is a finite resource. If there's some type of instance, you're not going to be able to go down to your local whatever Dunham Sports and buy, some ammo. So I wouldn't be too keen on bartering ammunition for that reason alone. And then of course there's always the, that might fall into wrong hands and be used against you. That's the other thing with it. But I look at ammo and stuff like ammo and antibiotics, that kind of stuff. I look at that stuff as kind of finite resources. Those are things like Mosaic said, I only plan on bartering things I can produce myself. Those are things I can't produce that. I can't produce motor oil myself to put in a vehicle. So, I have to be really cautious when bartering that stuff, that I'm, making sure that I'm getting what I need to get out of that. But yeah, bartering, I have some really different theories on bartering compared to, I'm not going to set up a table out in front of my house in an SHTF situation with a bunch of dollar store crap on it. Think I'm going to start some type of barter market. That's not going to happen here. Well, sure. Rip Curl's got, just be careful, pharmacies, because they will become targets to get things. Yeah, your big box stores, pharmacies, gas stations, those are going to be the first places if there's some type of panic where people are going and they're trying to get supplies, or they know whatever the comet's coming and it's going to hit, take your pick. Those are going to be the first places that are going to be dangerous. And I think gas stations right now, I've seen most of the time when I've seen some type of altercation taking place, it took place at a gas station, and that's right now before anything's going on. So, you can, it's going to get worse after, something like that takes place, but those places are going to become the wild, wild west in a heartbeat. Scout, just some things to consider. If gold and silver are at record highs now, what do you think the prices will be when the stock market tanks? And the thing with with the prices of gold and silver, it's because the dollar's worthless. When commodities go up in price, that means the dollar isn't worth as much. And that's just a simple, I guess, a simple formula to look at that. Harry Morgan, not barter ammo. Yeah, like I said, ammo is something I can't. I can't just go down in the basement and whip up a batch of 5.56 ammo. So that's something I really don't really want to barter. I do want to say never say never, but it would be right down at the very, I'd really have to be desperate to even consider something like that. What Rip Curl, what you want to know is where all the distribution centers near you for medical and medicine. And yeah, and a lot of times the vehicles that transport pharmaceuticals to the pharmacies are typically unmarked. It's a UPS truck don't drive up to the pharmacy and drop off the medication. Those are all unmarked vehicles, usually some type of large van. Like around here, the pharmacies for the big box stores and then the smaller mom and pop pharmacies, those are some type of usually large van where they have the totes in there, and that's how they actually deliver the medication. I've been in retail for so many years, I've seen that stuff different times, but that is how it's delivered. It's not delivered in in UPS or FedEx vehicles or anything like that. That's a separate delivery assistance altogether. Library Lizard, I'm bartering in faith, love, and obedience for eternity in paradise. Yeah. Having a spiritual, how can I say this? Having a spiritual relationship with, God and Jesus. I always looked at Jesus, he's my brother, he's my savior, but he's also, my brother. He is, he came here and he lived the life and he's seen some of the same evil, and he tried to make the world a better place when he walked the face of the earth until he sacrificed himself for us, and that's just what a good brother would do. I never had any siblings, but I got people that are friends of mine that I consider my brothers, that I would lay down my life for them if I had to, and I feel that's just following in Jesus's footsteps. And that's sort of kind of my take on that. Everybody has their own religious faith, but that is how I look at it. And speaking of that too, everybody should have a couple of good Bibles. I actually have boys, I don't know if they're Boy Scout, but they're kind of like hiking Bibles that are leather bound and they're kind of small. I actually have several ones of those here. I don't know if I got one right here because mine is beside the bed. I don't think I have one in here. I only got the big Bibles in here, but um, a small portable Bible you can throw in your duffel bag to take with you is a good idea. So that's another thing that would be definitely worth having. Train cars and truck stops will be a great place to scavenge. I think they already are. I actually know where there's kind of a small homeless camp, and that homeless camp is literally across the interstate from a fairly large truck stop. And if you think about it, that's actually a really good place because then the truck stop has showers, they have sinks, they have bathroom facilities. Most truck stops have, prepared food. So, you go out and you're panhandling and you got a little bit of cash, you can go in there and you can buy your food and you can, take a shower, and then you can go take a nap in your tent at the homeless camp across the road. So, some of that stuff is kind of interesting to see how those people live and how they survive through these different situations. But I noticed that camp is set up right close to that really large truck stop, where all the facilities that you would kind of need in a home are right available there. So again, that's something else just to kind of in conversation here. Yeah, barter should be done only in certain places with certain people, and that's something I believe that would be set up like in small communities and stuff, let's just say small town, whatever. I think if there would be some type of big collapse like that, setting up a market like an old school medieval market on a certain time at a certain day, I think where there could be some type of control over that to make sure that the places aren't robbed and ransacked, or the local, and I don't mean this in a sexist way, but where the local men can kind of keep an eye on that and have some type of discipline and watch over that so it doesn't become something where pillagers could come in and take advantage of that. King James, not paraphrased, copyrighted for money. Yeah, I think the ones that I have are all King Jameses. Yeah, they're small leather bound ones. They were I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, they were actually pretty yeah, I could get them at different places, and I bought two of them. I have two of those small leather bound ones, and those are the ones that I when I travel or go somewhere, those are the ones that I take with me. Oh, let's see what else we got here. And those protests and stuff that were taking place, I haven't heard where anything has gotten out of hand with any of them, but that always has the potential for those to go crazy. I know the George Floyd ones that they had around here in a couple of the smaller communities. A lot of the businesses they just closed during these protests because in 2020, I mean, a lot of those protests were so violent and so bad. A lot of the businesses, when they heard a protest was coming at a specific time, they just closed down. And the one store in particular, I remember they took all their pallet goods that they had out in the parking lot and stuff, and they put that in the front of the building so nobody could get to the windows to break anything or smash anything. But the people around here, when there were protests for that kind of stuff, and thank goodness nothing really took place, but they really took that stuff seriously. And I can see where people around here, that if there was something like that that took place here locally, people around here would be proactive to shut some of that stuff down so there could be less of a chance of some type of hassle. It goes back to the rooftop Koreans. The rooftop Koreans weren't afraid to protect their homes and their businesses during the LA riots. uh, Dangerous freedom. If it's bad enough that we have to set up barter markets. Oh yeah, do not do any type of bartering with an Overwatch. And yeah, that's what I was saying there, Wayne. You would have to have some type of security. There would have to be somebody that kept an eye on who was let in and who was running things. It would have to be, otherwise nobody would. First of all, nobody would show up. Nobody's gonna risk their life to go to something like that. But if it was set up in a proper way, and there was a certain amount of security and stuff provided, there would be. There I would be probably successful then. Mr. Bumblehill, probably like a free market, but everybody being armed. Yes, I would assume that would be it very much. They'll get crazy as the sun sets, and that's always it. Warm weather, and when night falls, that's when all the bad stuff, all the bad elements come out. We had some here in Indiana. They were just making traffic a nightmare. Well, yeah, they want to disrupt everybody's lives, so they make their point. That's kind of their thing. Essential TAM MR can set up a booth for testing metals. Yeah, heck, you just like I said, I'm no jeweler or anything like that, but like I said, that was something that I have here just in case it would ever come down to it, so I could actually test, the metals to see if they're legit, so I wouldn't get swindled for everything. Let's see here. Werewolves made prepping a nightmare. Oh, I'm sure they're, the reason I guess I'm so open about my preparedness on YouTube and stuff like that. First of all, I want more preppers out there. I want preppers. I want everybody to be a prepper, because if everybody's a prepper, there's going to be less of a chance of, all the bad connotations if there is some type of really bad situation, society collapses or whatever. So the more people that are preppers, there's less of a strain on all the resources that are out there. But I feel confident enough. We're in a small town here. I'm integrated in a small town. I've always lived here. I am active in my community. I have a job here in a community. I have a job at actually a pretty essential part of the community. So, I see a lot of people that work not only for the village, but the contractors, law enforcement, all these people know me. So I know if there is going to be some type of situation take place, there will be a consolidation here in our town. Our group pretty much already exists. It's just not what you normally think of as a group as far as prepping, but we all have sort of the mindset here that if something does take place, we're going to consolidate our efforts and we're going to protect our community. So it's a little bit different than the ones that have, the mags and they have the different meetings and all that other stuff, because we already sort of have our understanding here, if that all makes sense. Alaska Prepper did a video on metal testing equipment about a year ago. That's cool. Like I said, I did a video on it too. I don't remember how long ago it was, but I did a video on that. Like I said, I'll throw links in the descriptions for that. Mother Refugee hates Lovenox. Yeah, that Lovenox is what you got to give yourself. You got to give yourself shots in the belly to bridge your blood thinners and then if you're having any type of medical procedure after they cut 8 inches of my intestines out. I got my Lovenox shots too because I couldn't get up and move around as much as they would have liked me to at first. So then I got Lovenox shots because they didn't want blood clots to develop in my legs after that surgery, because that was another risk of that. There is not enough land for most people to be preppers. 300 million and rising fast. You can only divide up the existing land. You know, I wish it was to a point where everybody had 10 acres. People could learn to live that way then again, but that's just not how our system is set up. But if everybody had kind of their own 10-acre plot to do what they wanted to do with, I know a lot of preppers that would really take advantage. They would have gardens, they would have livestock. Everybody would become a hobby farmer. Boy, wouldn't that be a nice world, that everybody is a hobby farmer and could produce about 50% of their own stuff. I know the powers that be wouldn't like that because they wouldn't make as much money, but we know how much more resilient society would be. Uh, I think it would be much more resilient than what we have now. 10 Tigers, we know the uses for oxygen absorbers. Is there a use in long-term food storage for silica gel packs? I've never used silica gel packs for food storage, but I've used silica gel packs in ammo cans all the time. Every ammo can that I put up gets 4 or 5 silica gel packs thrown in on top of them to keep the humidity down and keep the moisture on. Most metal ammo cans will have a rubber seal in there so you can seal them down, and that's kind of the perfect environment for those silica gel packs. Yeah, I use home mosaic. I build a SHTF tactical seed starting table to go into high production fast. Yeah, I actually had a couple of tables that I built. They were sheets of OSB that I ripped in half and I lined them with plastic, and they had 2x4s around the outside, and then I had towers on either side with another 2x4 across. And I could set those up on sawhorses and then cover them with plastic and to make kind of a small greenhouse in there. And I actually use that a couple of different times to grow greens and to start things like, my tomatoes and peppers and stuff. It actually worked really good because I kind of created that microclimate in there. And I should do another video on that because that's something that would be valuable for you guys to know. Oh yeah, library lizards. I'd be thrilled with an acre. I'll tell you what, you can do a lot with, if you got an acre or even a half an acre where you got good sunlight coming into it, and you got a way where you can irrigate that and whatever, maybe have a fruit tree or two on that, you're well on your way to starting something. Not everybody needs land. Small stock and gardens and urban lots would alleviate situation greatly. That was one thing that actually failed here a couple of years ago here in our town. They wanted to do a community garden, and there was some land that was kind of abandoned, and they said, we're going to do this community garden, and everybody was gung-ho at the beginning to start this community garden in the spring, but by late summer, early fall, nobody went out there and tended it, so it kind of it kind of dissipated, but I would have liked to seen that kind of kick in more, but it was too large for one person to take care of. And I think they tried to bite off more than they could chew with that. I think if they would have started smaller with that and actually divided that up amongst certain families. So, you had this many square feet, that was yours to plant what you want in there. I think if they would have done that, then, you would have been able to tell who was taking care of stuff and who wasn't. I think it would have been better off than just doing this giant community thing. And then nobody kind of really took care of it. So, yeah, that was kind of a failure. Hey there, Journey with Nicole, but trying to find a video I did a couple years ago where you went to a local park and showed the water spigot and you had the key. I can't find. I did a video where I showed the water pump at the side of the road. I'll try to put a link in the description of this video for that, Nicole, so you can check in on that if you want to. Quarter acre with a hoe and a shovel. Oh yeah, quarter acre with a hoe and a shovel, and you got good ground. You can plant potatoes in there, and you'll be doing good. Mother Refugees throwing a link up there, so maybe that'll be a link there that can help you guys out. I can't tell what the link is from my end here. Oh, that's the metal testing video. Thanks, Mother. I appreciate that. Called a Silcock key, buy only from a reputable source. The Silcock keys, I have been noticing them popping up in local hardware stores, and I'm sure places like Home Depot and stuff would have them too, but I've noticed them recently in local hardware stores. So they are kind of available around there. Liberty Garden, there is more resilience in a community full of backyard gardens than a community with one garden. And I think that was kind of the big deal with that. I think if people have their own that they could take care of, I think they would do better than with the community aspect. Like I said, it was a good idea and everybody was gung-ho at the beginning, but it really fell off at the end. Oh yeah, the key to an SHTF garden is water. And actually what I use for my irrigation here, I made a funnel basically that goes on my downspout for the garage, and I ran that into a tube, and I ran that tube into an old hot water tank, and it's already got the spigot down at the bottom, so I can open that just like a faucet to fill my sprinkle can, so I can go water. So, and it's a 40-gallon tank, so I got 40 gallons of water there. Every time it rains, more water goes back into that, and that's actually my irrigation water. So I always have my natural water here to water stuff. And like I said, it's completely improvised. And if I ever redo the roof on my garage, I'm probably going to do another one of them, and maybe even where I have like a triple tank thing, so I can store at least 100 to 120 gallons of water, because what I got is good, but I wish it was actually a little bit more, because I actually do quite a bit of hand irrigation, because I spot water. I don't water the whole garden and waste the water. I kind of concentrate the water right where the vegetables are. Hearts of palm, several species are edible, but it must be used and preserved. It spoils quickly. That's tuck. I did not know that. It's interesting. Back in 2020, they wouldn't let people in Flint have a garden. I believe that people in Flint have been so beat up. It's no wonder that they're all ornery when you go down there. Jax Barton, hello, Modern. How you doing? Weeding is a lot of work. It's true. And you got to get the weeds when they're small. If you wait till they get big, you're kind of defeating the purpose. So it's kind of a grab your coffee in the morning and go out first thing, weed for 15 minutes, and just kind of keep that process up. That's the way to do it. And I always try to plant my stuff as close together as possible, so it reduces the need to weed once the vegetable plants reach maturity. Oh yeah, Patera has been encouraging people to stock up on their Bibles too. Yeah, that's good, because you know what? If things got really bad, I can see where people would try to not publish those or not get those out there. There's always some type of religious persecution that's going on. So that would be, I can see where it would be good to make sure that you have those things. Sunset, why do local farmers charge so much for their produce? The thing with farmers markets is a lot of times those aren't farmers. They go buy the produce from the farmers. They go to the farmer market, pretend that they're the farmer or the producer, and then jack the price up, the whole middleman thing. I've seen where they set up farmers markets, but they didn't grow the stuff. They went down to Eastern Market in Detroit, bought the stuff, brought it up here, and then pretended it was produce. So it goes back again to that whole swindling thing. You got to kind of watch. You got to watch sort of the background of stuff when you're doing that stuff. So, I think that's a lot of the reason why they do it. And of course, there are some legitimate, folks that do really good with organic and stuff, and they have really high quality stuff. So, of course, they want to be compensated for that, and they charge more for that. But sometimes that higher price you're paying, you're not getting anything any different than you do buying it just at the grocery store, because people are like that. Uh, Patriot Preacher. Wow, I have 800 Bibles on my back porch. Will be distributed as God directs. Wow, that's awesome, Patriot. That is awesome. You got more Bibles than the Gideons. The Gideons are the ones that always put the Bibles in the hotel rooms. If you guys didn't know that, Sunset where uh, Hermit Hill Homes. A lot of prepping channels say you need to join the mag. I've pretty been much a lone wolf my whole life. I'm not sure I'm interested in joining up with other people. That's one of those things. Everybody's got to take their own experiences and go from there. I'm not going to tell people that, yeah, you have to have this or that, because every situation is, different. And I can see where people get into a mag and think, hey, everything's good and kosher. And then maybe some of those people weren't so honest about what they know or what they did or what their intentions are after SHTF, because you're really not going to know how people are going to react to those situations until they actually happen, because talk is cheap. Who is going to stick around? I did a video on that too a while back, about, things that people don't talk about with prepping groups. You know, until people have had some type of shared hardship that they have shared with each other, because that's why military training is so tough. You have that shared hardship that causes people to form that bond, and you just can't do that by having breakfast once a month at Denny's. You have to have that shared hardship to kind of facilitate those harder bonds that will survive some type of SHTF. Using mulch helps with a lot of weeds. Yeah, and I actually tried something this year. I tried planting dill in between my potato rows so I didn't have to weed it as much, and it worked a little too good. The dill sort of took over where my potatoes were. I still got my potatoes out of there, but I could see where that got out of hand in a hurry. It was a good idea, but it worked a little too good. My SHTF starting table will rain harvest water with 60-gallon storage capacity to rooftop garden of a, wow, that's awesome. Liberty Garden, a lot just buy from Walmart and sell it as organic. Yeah, and that's like Liberty Garden said there. That's just it. People go to these like restaurant places where the restaurants get their groceries and stuff from, and they buy this produce. Like I said, they go down to Eastern Market in Detroit, they buy it, they bring it up here, and then they can put whatever they want on it. You don't really know where that stuff's coming from because talk is cheap. How do you test whether that tomato's organic or not? As far as I know, there's no way to test that. You're taking the people's word. And that's the thing too with all the organic stuff that they have in grocery stores. How do I know it's organic? Because the label said so. Maybe I'm a little paranoid and suspicious, but that's kind of how I look at that stuff. MR, these local farmers are charging sky high prices. Well, then they're just being profiteers. They're just being profiteers. And like I said, if you're producing a really high quality product, I can see where you want, a premium price for that stuff. But like I said, a lot of times people are just trying to scalp other people. Well, Coney B, thanks for being here. Y'all have a good night. I'm getting ready here to shut her down anyway. I don't want to take away everybody's Saturday night here. If you go public about prepping, you will draw needy people looking for someone to take care of them. I think that's going to be a problem anyway, especially in communities, just because you have a large prepping community. People, after things start happening, people are going to be like that. Let's see. Grass-fed, freeze-dried raw burgers, cooked to tasting fresh. Any grass-fed beef sounds good to me. FYI, tar paper works very well for reed retention in a garden. Yeah, what did Mom put down? Mom put down that she would get rolls of that black plastic, and if she really didn't want weeds to grow, she would cut a circle if I remember right, she did it for cabbage. She would have her cabbage start in the center, and she would cut a circle out, plant the cabbage in there, and then she had black plastic around that, and then at the end of the year she would take that black plastic up, but then that kind of allowed that cabbage head to grow. I think it was cabbage anyway, if I remember right. That's one of the things that my mom did too. Essential Tim, I wish I could afford a freeze dryer. Yeah, the last one that I seen for sale somewhere was at a hardware store up in Mayo, Michigan, and it was a smaller one. I think it was $3,500. They supply a lot of stuff to the Amish there. Sheep manure and chicken manure compost, says my tomatoes are organic. Sheep manure and chicken manure is what Mom always used because we always had chickens. Chicken manure is very high in nitrogen, and Mom would kind of let it compost a little bit, set a little bit. That's horse manure is another one, but horse manure is so potent it actually will burn the plants. So horse manure you have to compost for a certain period of time for it to work. Mikkel, I use cardboard boxes to cover with wood chips for free. Oh, thank you, freeze dried ice cream. I really appreciate that. I always appreciate you guys, and I appreciate you being here. And thank you so much for the super chat. Your wonderful, informative, relatable content got my mother-in-law hooked on prepping. She watches you all the time now. Oh, well, that's awesome. You tell your mother-in-law that I said hi, and I really appreciate her being here. Mother Clucker Horseman or 2 to 3 compost. Yeah, that sounds about right. And another thing, the small boxes, like if you go to a grocery store and you get the boxes like the strawberry containers come in, they're usually heavier. They're designed to carry like this. They stack, and then they only have a lip around the edge about that high. Those are the best ones to store like your apples in. You take your apples, you wrap them in a sheet of newspaper, and you put them stem side down in those boxes, and you can actually stack those boxes up them and keep them in a cool, dark place. Those apples will lose a little bit of moisture and they'll get a little bit wrinkly towards spring, but those apples right there will keep all winter for you. And I have done that multiple times. In fact, I'm getting close to doing that again here. I got to grab a few boxes from the local store here so I can put up half a dozen boxes like that again. And I always take the best apples I put up that way, and then whatever's left, I could either make cider out of them or applesauce or whatever. Freedom Nugget, I have dozens of chickens and rabbits, and they make compost for me. Rabbit manure works good too. Corn and passion fruit can take hot compost. Yeah, corn is a little bit like potatoes. It uses a lot of nitrogen. It uses a lot of nitrogen. Heavy feeders is what they call it. Heavy feeders. Well, guys, I am going to get ready to close this live stream down here. I really appreciate everybody spending their Saturday night here on my live stream. I hope the conversation was good for everybody. Hopefully everybody could pick up a little bit of information here, some ideas and all. I always like to have these conversations to generate ideas. And of course, I always learn something from you guys just as much as I put out there for you guys. I do have some videos coming up here this week. I'm going to do the pumpkin one. I want to do a spice one here for you guys. And then I got a kind of a Minuteman one too that I am going to put out. But I appreciate each and every one of you guys being here and spending your time with me. I hope you guys have a safe and productive week. And you guys take care out there.